Hello and welcome to this week's webcast, which is going to cover the second part of the ERRICA process, the refine element. Last week we covered empathy, which is the way that we need to start the handling objection process, actually putting ourselves in the shoes of our customer and understanding what it's like to look at things from their point of view. Today we're going to look at actually getting under the skin of what that point of view is by refining the objection they have, both in our mind but also in the customer's mind, because actually they might not be clear, just as we're not particularly clear on what they mean when they're putting a particular objection in place. There are potentially 4 areas that we can look at from a refining objections point of view. One is looking at where we actually have a great deal of knowledge about the objection, because maybe it's something we've heard before, at least we think we have heard it before, and the customer actually doesn't know a lot. They're just sort of scrabbling around to say things. The other area, which is right down at the far side of the chart, is looking at areas where actually the customer knows what their objection is, but we just don't get it, we don't understand it. Each one of those is where actually we need to explore the area in more detail to come to a common level of understanding. More frequently, however, we actually are starting right at the very, very bottom, where we've got a very low level of customer knowledge of what the objection really is and what it really means, and we don't understand it either. We've got to create a greater mutual understanding of what the problem is before we get anywhere close to trying to address it. So the key part of this is to actually ask questions when people are coming out with the sort of objections that they come out with, to get under the surface and find out what does it really mean. Not just in our mind and in our assumptions based on stuff we've heard before, and not just guesswork from the customer, but actually having a collaborative approach to working out what the problem is, so that when we come to solve it, we can actually solve it in a way that will be highly effective. So to give you an example of that, let's take 5 particularly common types of objection that come up all the time and look at how we would go about refining these objections. So the first one up here is, it's too expensive. We hear that all the time, it's too expensive. Fine. It's not big enough or small enough or round enough or square enough or any of those sort of things, something to do with the physicality of the product. The third one, I'd love to say yes, but I need to go away and check with somebody else, check with a third party about it. We hear that all the time. I need to go away and have a think about it. I'm not ready to commit and make the decision now. Hear that again all the time. And then particularly in business-to-business environments, but sometimes for bigger ticket items in a business-to-consumer environment, we also hear the, well, it's outside my budget. I don't have that sort of budget in place to be able to buy what you're suggesting that I buy. Now, the challenge with all of these and any other objections that you have is that we can see it as being a bit simplistic to ask questions, well, what does that mean? And the reason that can be a bit simplistic is, well, if it's too expensive, it means the price is too high. So don't ask me stupid questions. That may be the kind of response that we get. So part of it is about what sort of question we ask to make sure we're digging under the surface in a way that we're going to actually get extra information as opposed to just repetition of the existing information that we've got. And secondly, making sure that we do it in a way that is not confrontational, is not going to have the customer look at us and say, oh, well, surely you understand this. This is straightforward, but actually gets them to explore it a little bit in their mind as well, so that they increase their level of understanding about what they really mean by this potentially instinctive response to the question, are you ready to buy? So if we're going to do that, we need to avoid the just simple, well, why is that? Because, well, I've kind of just told you. What do you mean is a bit aggressive. We want to avoid that sort of thing. And we certainly want to avoid the sort of stepping back and going, well, okay, then there's nothing I can do about it. We have an opportunity now, when the customer's in front of us, to ask really good questions to get a greater understanding of exactly what the problem is before we move further along the objection handling process. So let's have a look at how we might do that. Number 1, it's too expensive. How would we deal with the idea of somebody just turning around and saying, it's too expensive? Well, actually, instead of saying, what do you mean? Because, well, it's too expensive. That's exactly what I said. We might want to look at, well, how are you coming to that conclusion? What are you comparing it to? So that we start to get additional information on top of the information that they've actually given us. Likewise, if they say something like, it's not big enough or it's not small enough, we need to find out, well, why is that? How are they coming to that conclusion? What is their intent in terms of the use of this particular item? Oh, really? It's not big enough. Tell me a little bit more about that. In what way exactly is it not too big? So we're trying to, by using words like exactly and precisely, drill down so we get a much clearer, more specific understanding of some of these very general things. I need to go and check with so-and-so about this particular thing. All right, great. What do you think that they'll be interested in? And so again, we're going to get additional information over and above. I need to go away and think about it. Of course. What sort of things are you going to be considering? Again, we're getting extra information. And then finally, we've only got a budget of such and such. Great. How was that budget set up? Where did that budget come from? On what is that budget based? So we're going to delve down, get additional pieces of information from people, and that way we're actually going to be able to be in a position to move on to the next step of ERRICA, which is to reposition the objection. Repositioning the objection is what we're going to cover next week, so look out for that video when it comes out in about 7 days' time. And obviously, in the meantime, as usual, if you've got any questions or other areas you'd like us to cover as part of this series of videos, just get in touch with us. Visit us at lemore.com. Thank you.